It's all about the rose. Good morning, and welcome to my neighborhood. It's May 1st today, and a lot of people see this as the beginning of spring, but it has some other designations too. It's World Naked Gardening Day. Now, before you get all in a tizzy about that, it's one of the very few body positive celebrations. It was originally designed as kind of a rogue sort of thing. It's a little bit satire, a little bit fun. And it's in your place, your time. It's completely appropriate for pandemics because you can just be in your garden. And but it talks about the clothing that we wear. And clothing isn't just the fabrics, the jackets and shirts and hats and glasses, makeup, language, ideas that we all have. Naked Gardening Day is an interesting juxtaposition because it puts together the idea of dropping that pretense, that false modesty, so to speak, and being positive and connecting with the garden, in its naked glory, so to speak. Naked Gardening Day is the first day of the naked gardening season. Everybody thinks it's just a flash in the pan one day thing, but no. It's just the beginning. And there are practical aspects to this. One is the vitamin D that you get if you are out at the right time of day. And the way you judge this is if your shadow is shorter than you are, then you're in a position to get vitamin D from the sun. And 90% of our vitamin D typically comes from sun exposure. And in many places in the world, people are deficient in vitamin D. And the medical bottom line for vitamin D is very old. Typically, it's about not getting rickets. And so that's quite a low level of vitamin D. And a much higher therapeutic level. But you don't want to be taking a lot of really high doses of vitamin D orally. But getting it from the sun takes you higher than you can get orally anyways, based on the US submariner studies. So when your shadow is shorter than you are, don't burn. 5 to 15 minutes, depending on skin type, age, all manner of different factors affect how people absorb vitamin D from the sun. So about half the time it would take you to burn. Around 5 to 15 minutes per side, based on, of course, full body exposure. Now, the reason for the measurement of full body exposure goes all the way back to the original studies of this stuff. And if full body exposure was just an easy metric, other than saying, which 40% of your body was exposed and not having comparable data. But in this case, since it's Naked Gardening Day, it's not a bad metric. Some studies you'll find try and give people bolus doses of vitamin D, like very large doses when they hit the hospital. But of course, your body doesn't absorb vitamin D very well, if at all, in those circumstances. So we also see large studies where people do better in the winter with seasonal affective disorder when they have picked up quite a bit of vitamin D during the summer. But summers are short. We're just at the point now here, and the shadow short of the new hour takes into account time of day, time of year, and latitude. Typically, it only applies here about an hour around solar noon, and because we're on a modified time shift here, that's 1 o'clock. So it's a very short period of time, and here it only lasts till about the end of August. So, World Naked Gardening Day being on May 1st, at least here, means something. Because it's when you can get vitamin D. It's sunny, the birds are out, there's ravens talking in the tops of the trees there. World Naked Gardening Day has other implications because it can be considered not just about people and our preoccupation with fashion and bodies. We can look at this on a more global basis. And by garden, I've got to tell you, the gardens can be anything that we tend. They can be forests, like I'm walking in now. They can be oceans and kelp bed and eelgrass. They can be oceanic systems, environmental systems. They can be our planet, our entire environment. We appear to be gardening. And when it comes right down to it, we may not be doing the best job. There is two recent things that were kind of interesting. There is a icebreaker that got locked in the ice in Antarctica. And then a really major storm came up. I think it was designated a cyclone, but I'm not sure. And so they got to look at the effects of a really big storm on Arctic ice. And it was interesting because what it did, and nobody really knew how this worked before, what it did is it created a depression in the water surface that, and pushing down on the ice, I guess, too, from the pressures and vacuums created by the storm. And the effect was to draw warmer water up from below the ice. And then there was another factor in there. But I think the third factor was as the ice broke up, the water is much darker than the ice, doesn't reflect the sunlight back up into space, and so it absorbs a lot more heat, promoting further warming of the water and breaking down of the ice. So again, we're seeing that we're gradually, very gradually, bit by bit, understanding how our planet, how the garden of our planet works. On a legal front, in Germany, there had been a case where a bunch of young people, kids, were suing the government in court for not mitigating climate change. Now, this is happening in quite a number of countries. It's been happening in the US since 2015, I believe. Still not resolved. But in Germany, the court ruled that It was an infringement on the future freedoms of young people, even though they've dropped their carbon footprint by 20 or 30% and have plans to drop it another 20% as they go forward. It wasn't enough. There were no plans. For the future, it was simply being put on the shoulders, the future shoulders of all these young people. And they won a very decisive, very clearly worded court ruling. So, naked gardening. Positive, body positive. Clear connections with the ground, with the earth. What else can I say? Get out there, go garden. Nobody has to see you. That's not what it's about. It's about your connection with the land. Thank you very much. It's a beautiful day here. I'm exceptionally grateful for the curiosity and humor that drives people to ask questions, that does the research, that when they're stuck in a storm, instead of just hiding, they get their instrumentation out and they go to town with it. The kids that go and do something very unfamiliar, like suing their national governments in court, or just the people that take a huge risk and go out into their gardens naked, just for a change, to start the naked gardening season off right. I see you. I'm very grateful that you're here. Thank you. And I hope you have a good day. Enjoy. Push the bell if you want to be notified when we're coming up again. Tell your friends. Share, like, subscribe, all those good things. Thank you again. See you next time. It's all about the rose. The rose. No water, mud between my toes. No water, sprinkler on the hose. No water, shedding on my clothes. My folks, they do tell me that I shouldn't be out this way. I flash them a smile and throw them a little sachet. It's all about the rose, mud between my toes, sprinkler on the hose, shedding on my clothes. My friends tell me that I shouldn't greet them this way. I show them my garden and fears start melting away. It's all about the rose, mud between my toes, sprinkler on the hose, shedding all my clothes. My neighbors have joined me, they no longer peer around. We plant all the seeds and dig in the ground. It's all about the rose, no water. Mud between my toes, no water. Sprinkler on the hose, no water. And shedding on my clothes.